Don't give up, you know it's true. Gotta do what you wanna do.
Hello, welcome to UPSC Gangsters. This is Arjun Aryan, and I'll be taking you through the editorial and opinion columns as discussed before. This is the editorials that belong to 18th September that we're going to go through right now. I will be taking you through the important points under each editorial and opinion columns. I will not be telling you the entire thing because from UPSC perspective, those things that are important for the examination, that will be covered and thoroughly explained. Alright, so let's get started. The first editorial is titled Reading the Tea Leaves. So this editorial, before I start about it, this editorial is about India, China and Japanese relations. Alright, so we are talking about trilateral relations here, how things have changed and current scenario of how it's going on between India, China and Japan. Alright, so let's get started. The subheading, it reads, the emerging India-Japan alignment sets the stage for the reordering of the Asian strategic landscape. Alright, so the subheading is kind of important because it says, depending on these three countries, the entire Asian economic climate will change. Alright, so we are the three giant players, or three major players of the ancient continent, of the Asian continent, and whatever policies we are looking to do in future and whatever ways we prosper, they come to an understanding that entire Asia will prosper out of it. Alright, three power blocks of Asia, they call it. Alright, so let's move into it. The first fact under this. Alright, the US rebalancing announced in 2011 was a belated recognition of these changes driven home by the impact of the 2008 financial crisis. Most of the rivalries are being played out in the crowded geopolitical space of the Indo-Pacific, and Asian economies now account for more than half of global GDP and becoming larger in coming years. Like this, the fact here, the most important point here is the Asian countries, alright, the Asian economies account for more than half of global GDP, gross domestic product. So this single continent is responsible for half of the world's development in economic basis. Alright, so this itself would give you an understanding of how important this block is. Alright, and you know that India has a huge market, China and Japan controls a lot of quality industries, both in automobile sector and in various technological fronts. I needn't say about the companies they have and the global presence they have. So it is estimated that they will command more in future too. So therefore, these three countries play a major role in shaping the economic climate of the entire planet. Alright, the next let's go to the next point. China's rise is reflected in a more assertive China. According to President Xi Jinping, two guides policy announced in February, China should guide the shaping of the new world order and safeguarding international security. Much has changed during the last quarter century when Deng Xiaoping advised China to observe calmly, secure its position, hide its capability, bide its time, and not claim leadership. Alright, so the current leader of China wants to assert his presence because there is this prevailing opinion that US is losing its ground in the international sphere, especially with the coming of Trump as President of the United States. So they are saying both economically and politically, USA is slowly losing ground because there is just sort of $2 to $3 trillion difference between the Chinese economy and the US. So China is actually poised to overtake the US economy in another 5 to 6 years. So if they go beyond that 18 point something trillion dollar mark, China will be the biggest market, biggest economic power in the world. So that itself suggests that there's going to be a pole shift in power of the major countries of the world, of our planet. All right. So this is an important point because the current president of China is asserting his influence. He feels that it is time for China to take the center stage in global politics and economics. All right. It was not so in the previous leaders' phase. All right. They wanted to just observe everything calmly, secure their position, in the sense develop in silence, and not to reassert their leadership and all. All right. They didn't want to publicize things. They did not go for publicity and make the entire world know that China is growing and she is strong and all that. They didn't want to do that, which is exactly opposite to what USA does. Alright, if USA does anything, it's gonna be like huge. It's gonna be public. It's gonna be publicized like hell to let the other countries know that they are powerful. But China did the opposite, and they are doing what USA used to do right now. Alright, that's what this point says. Today's China is not just willing but eager to assume leadership and expects other countries to yield space. China has suggested a new type of great power relations to the US. Its assertiveness in the East China Sea with Japan, and in the South China Sea with its association of Southeast Asian nations, which is ASEAN, neighbors, sends a signal that while multipolarity may be desirable in a global order, in Asia, China is the predominant power and must be treated as such. So, when they're saying multipolar world, it means that there was a unipolar world before, alright, before the current phase, which is obviously led by United States of America. Because when Soviet Union fell, the US led institutions had the upper hand, alright. So then came into being World Bank and World Trade Organizations, UNO and all that, International Code and all that, alright. So all these things came up and they were predominantly based on US interests. Alright, so that is why when you see US attacking other nations and all that without proper sanctions or without proper approval from the UN governing body and all that, strict actions will not be taken against US because they are the ones who are majorly controlling these institutions. Alright, so when Soviet Union was there was a bipolar world, meaning the power to the eastern side was under Soviet, power to the western side was under the influence of USA. But now things are changing. Now China is on the rise, alright, rightly so, and China is looking for a multipolar world, alright, just like how Russia was suggesting, erstwhile Soviet Union, USSR, how they were suggesting for a multipolar world. China is suggesting the same thing again, alright. But when it comes to Asia, they want to be the predominant power, alright. They want to be respected in that way, which is you cannot say that is wrong or right or whatever, but that is the current situation. They are the second largest economy of the world, alright, and poised to overtake USA in a very short period of time. And obviously they are the biggest economic power in Asia, alright. You take the entire East, they are the biggest power. If you cross the Atlantic Ocean, easily they are the biggest power, alright. So they are looking to regionally become on top of the line, alright. Next point, even though China has been beneficiary of the US-led global order, it is impatient that it does not enjoy a position that it feels it deserves, especially in the Bretton Woods institutions. During the last 5 years, it has set about creating a new set of institutions, that is the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and the New Development Bank, and launched the Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI, to create a new trading infrastructure that reflects China's centrality as the largest trading nation. So, in this line, China has been a beneficiary of US-led global order in the sense the Chinese grew with US investment, not knowingly, but when the Chinese economy was going under industrialization phase, it was the majority of the business from USA that led to the China's growth. All right, don't ask me how this happened. This is common sense because USA was involved in a lot of wars, and the Gulf War and Afghanistan and all Iraq and all that. All right, and they were concentrating their resources towards oil. So silently, like the previous president's policy, silently China grew in power. All right, so when they made the political landscape, which is favorable, political landscape favorable for business, a lot of investments from US poured into China because the USA is a capitalist economy, so all they look for is profits. So when the Chinese government gave subsidies and cheap labor and all that, people poured their investment into China. All right, and that's how China rapidly grew. So this is this is how they benefited from US presence. All right, from US led global order. That's what they mean by this. Okay, and the second one is they talk about Bretton Woods institutions. Bretton Woods institutions and the World Bank. All right, those economic bodies, those monetary bodies that were created by with the USA in the front, all right, and other European powers and other world powers. So these are known as Bretton Woods institutions because they were created in a place called Bretton Woods, all right, nothing more than that. Okay, so next point, under the same point, it said that during the last 5 years it has set about creating a new set of institutions, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and New Development Bank and the Belt and Road Initiative. So these are the bodies created by China to actually counter US influence in the region. All right, so additional to ASEAN, these things have been also developed in the past 5 years. All right, and in this, obviously, China is the central focus. All right, so it reflects China's centrality as the largest trading nation. So whomever that are members in these institutions, China will be the dominant power, and they will be the ones who are controlling the majority of the stake in it. All right, something like that. Next point, the BRI, which is the Belt and Road Initiative, is also complemented by a growing Chinese naval presence in the Indian Ocean. Beginning in 2009, the PLA Navy started rotating 3 ship task forces through the Indian Ocean as part of the anti-piracy task force off the Somalian coast. Visits by nuclear attack submarines to littoral posts began to take place. In addition to Gwadar, China is now converting the supply facility at Djibouti into a full-fledged military base. Alright, so this talks about Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean. So you should have one fact in your mind, that Indian Ocean is the only ocean that is free from international disturbance or bases from any other world power. Russia doesn't have a base in the Indian Ocean, and even USA does not have a base in Indian Ocean. Alright, so this has been the trend right from the Congress period. Alright, so we do not encourage foreign nations to land their troops or have a base here, how much ever friendly we may be with them or how much ever economically dependent we were with them. We just didn't do that. China has some sort of relationship with Sri Lanka. It was good during the previous Sri Lankan regime. Right now it is like a normal relationship, or a normal, cordial, decency maintaining relationship. Not much is being done right now. Alright, but still, keeping in line with the previous commitments that were made during the previous Sri Lankan regime, they are carrying out these sort of things, and they are sending their ships and navy to guard the coastal regions, to guard them from piracy. Alright, and you should know the Malay Peninsula situated in the Indian Ocean that takes goods. Majority of the trade happens through this port, all right, through this peninsula. So majority of the ships have to go through this. So the Chinese ships, the containers from Japan and all that have to go through this area, and this area is supposed to be the most risky waters on the planet. Alright, not Atlantic Ocean, not even near Africa, but this is the most dangerous place. Alright, it has been internationally recognized that nearly a lot of nearly some 30 or 40 billion dollars per 6 months or something like that goes to piracy. Alright, so these are dangerous waters, but China is actually using this as an excuse to bring their ships. Alright, which we should be aware of. Alright, next point. Recent nuclear and long-range missile tests by North Korea have added to South Korean and Japanese anxieties. So Japan has been particularly rattled by the two missiles fired across Hokkaido, given the US push for more sanctions that depend on China for implementation. Most Japanese reluctantly admit that North Korea's nuclear and missile capability is unlikely to be dismantled anytime soon. So you know the recent problem that is going on, the North Korea's testing of ballistic missiles, and they have launched a nuclear test too. They have tested a hydrogen bomb, they have claimed. So all these are actually creating anxiety with Japan. They are kind of afraid right now. Alright, China will not be afraid because China is the largest trading partner of North Korea and one of the very few countries that trade with them. Alright, so probably only 2-3 countries trade with them, and of them, among them, China is the biggest trading partner with North Korea. Alright, so they are completely secure. It is Japan that is kind of afraid, and Japan is off late siding with United States because of the East China Sea dispute. All right, and they are afraid along with South Korea. All right, so because of their tests. Next point. Differences with China did not begin with Doklam. Now we are coming to the problems that exist between China and India. Alright, so I'll get on with the point. Differences with China did not begin with Doklam. It was preceded by the staple visa issue for Indians belonging to Arunachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir. Growing incidents of incursions along the disputed boundary, blocking of India's bid to join the nuclear suppliers group last year, ensuring that no language relating to Pakistan-based terrorist groups found mention in the BRICS summit in Goa, and preventing the inclusion of Masood Azhar from being designated as a terrorist by the UN Security Council by exercising a veto. So these are the past differences we had. The very recent one being Doklam. Alright, and the standoff was peacefully taken care of. Both the sides did not engage in any kind of incursions or warfare. Alright, and rest of the things which was said in the above point are facts. Alright, and these happened over a period of time. But the latest development in this is our Prime Minister as well as the Chinese President have met, and the next important point in this is China actually kind of prevented India from the UN bid, alright, UN Security Council bid, by exercising a veto. So veto is basically a vote that would nullify a collective decision. So it doesn't matter how many votes are there, if there is 100 or even 50 or 90% of the votes, or 99 even, that one single veto vote would nullify everything else. Alright, this is what China has used against us, and this happened during the previous UN General Meeting. Alright, General Assembly meeting. So that is one of the points. These are all the collective points of what happened in the past. Like I said, the current BRICS meeting, India and China has come closer because the kind of economic ties we have with China and how our economies are kind of intertwined with each other, and therefore we have come closer with each other to save this economic friendship that lasts between us. Alright, next point. The shared vision of an Asian century with a rising India and rising China is long past. Mr. Modi's personal diplomacy with Mr. Xi has had little influence on changing Chinese attitudes or behavior. After Doklam, there is finally a consensus that the old China policy does not serve our national interests and a review is long overdue. Like I said previously, China was trying to assert its influence. Alright, it was not okay with an idea of two rising giants in Asia. Alright, one being China and the other being India. Alright, it was not okay. It was okay with the idea of only a single economic giant in Asia. Alright, but now things have changed after Doklam. They have come into understanding. They have understood the fact that it is no longer viable, the old plan. Alright, next point. It is against this backdrop that Chinese Prime Minister Abe visited India last week. The contours of a new relationship were defined during Mr. Abe's earlier tenure. In 2006-2007, when annual summits were introduced, the relationship became a special strategic and global partnership. Alright, a special strategic and global partnership was the name that was given to the alliance between between India and Japan. Alright, Japan was invited to join in the Malabar naval exercises, and a joint declaration on security cooperation was concluded. Since then, significant content has been added. So these are all the points that instill the cooperation that happens between India and China. Alright, so these are just facts that how ever since Shinzo Abe has taken the leadership there, how we have worked things out. Alright, how Japan has come closer. You should also know that Japan was traditionally the highest investor in India when it comes to investments in capital side. Alright, investments in the form of cash. So Japan was always the highest, even more than US or even more than Russia for many years. Alright, so Japan and us, we already have a very good relationship. Alright, there is already a very good relationship that exists between the two countries, and now we are taking it to the next level, which is more visible. Alright, this will definitely send a message to China. That was probably the intention behind it. Alright, next point. To deepen strategic understanding, the two sides initiated a 2+2 dialogue involving the foreign and defense ministries in 2010. So make note of this 2+2 dialogue involving the foreign and defense ministries in 2010, because 2+2 might be asked in your mains examinations. Alright, write an account about the 2+2 dialogues between India and Japan. So what does the 2+2 stand for, and what it is about, and what are the current things that are happening under it. So all these things you have to be knowing. A memorandum on enhancing defense and technology security cooperation was signed, and talks on acquiring the amphibious maritime surveillance Shinmae US-2I began in 2013. So this is the name of a amphibious maritime surveillance ship. Alright, so that we are actually currently in talks with Japan of acquiring them. Alright, trilateral dialogue involving both the US and Japan and covering strategic issues was elevated to ministerial level in 2014. So trilateral dialogue involving both the US and Japan and covering strategic issues was elevated to ministerial level means it was just like talks between the premiers, meaning the leaders of the respective nations. They were in talks about having a trilateral cooperation. When it goes to the ministerial levels, meaning the concerned ministries of the countries, respective countries, they will meet and formalize the process. So just the leaders speaking with each other will not cut it out. All right, that alone will not confirm anything. So the people from the ministries, the minister, and along with the PAs, along with the secretaries, they all are supposed to meet and frame down a kind of an agreement and all to make a cooperation in force. All right, to make a cooperation official. So that has to be done. So it has been taken to the ministerial level in 2014, meaning the ministries of the respective countries are meeting regularly after that. All right. Japanese participation in the Malabar exercises suspended because of Chinese protests, and then it was restored in 2015. Once the agreement for the 12 US-2I aircraft is concluded, with the follow-up acquisition as part of Make in India, the strategic relationship will begin to acquire critical mass. Alright, so this is factual. So when the Malabar exercises were happening, there were protests in China, and because of that it was cancelled. And in 2015, again, we restored it. Alright, that is the fact from this. So moving on to the next one. And one more point when it comes to the Japanese defense industry, I should tell you, the World War II sanctions on Japan was just lifted a few years back, a span of 3 or 4 years. Alright, so that was over. That contract is over right now with Japan, meaning their armies and their defense expenditure and their defense technologies and the defense research and businesses, they were all under scrutiny. They were limited, alright, post World War II, and you know why, alright, just like Germany. So they did not want another situation to occur. But that agreement is over right now, and Japan is expanding its defense technology and defense companies too, just like USA does. Alright, so they are doing that. So this is a significant improvement. Alright, so next point. However, the strategic, and one more thing, the US-2I is an aircraft. Alright, it is not amphibious maritime surveillance ship, it is an aircraft. Alright, so next one. Once the agreement for the 12 US-2I aircraft is concluded with the follow-up acquisition as part of Make in India, the strategic relationship will begin to acquire critical mass. In this point, one more important thing you have to notice is this will be taken from Japan, technology and everything, and it's going to be crafted and it's going to be produced in India. That is what Make in India policy actually stands for. Alright, we're going to get the technical know-how from them, and there will be Japanese engineers that are coming here and they will teach us, and we'll be doing stuff here. Alright, that is what Make in India means in this line. Okay, next point. However, the strategic partnership needs stronger economic ties. Today, India-Japan trade languishes at around $15 billion. Alright, a quarter of trade with China, while Japan-China trade is around $300 billion. Alright, which is really high. Therefore, the primary focus during the recent visits has been on economic aspects. So it's obvious, in order to counter China, in order to make Japan feel that India is as important as China, or more important as China, more important than China, we are supposed to increase our economic ties. The $15 billion figure should actually go up. So the same point continue. Therefore, the primary focus during the recent visit has been on economic aspects. The Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed rail corridor is more than symbolism in demonstrating the high-cost Japanese technology is viable in developing countries, and that India has the absorption capacity to master it. Completing it in 5 years is a management challenge, but the bigger challenge will be to transfer the know-how of best practices to other sectors of the economy. So the thing is, the cooperation that is going to happen between India and Japan for the high-speed rail corridor, bullet train, whatever we call it, that is kind of a high-costing technology. Alright, so the challenge would be to adopt it to Indian standards, make it cheap and viable. So that is the challenge. So next point. However, the strategic partnership needs stronger economic ties. Today, India-Japan trade languishes at around $15 billion. While Japan-China trade is around $300 billion. Alright, so Alright, and that alone is not the challenge. One of the biggest challenges would be the best practices to maintain this corridor. Alright, so how to maintain, what is the engineering behind it, because our engineers are not used to high speed trains and high speed technology. So the technology should pass on from Japan to India, and our engineers should be knowing about it, alright, to maintain it. And the parts for the high speed project and whatever things that are required for it, there will be another set of industries that actually maintain this corridor. Alright, so how this technical know-how is going to be filtered and distributed to the other industries is also a big challenge. Alright, according to this editorial, in this particular point, according to them, this is the biggest impediment, or this is the biggest challenge for them, alright, to spread it across the industries so that they are familiar with the new technology. That is their biggest concern here. So next point, another major initiative is the recently launched Asia-Africa Growth Corridor to build connectivity, for which Japan has committed $30 billion and India $10 billion. So Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, alright, we are trying to dominate the African landscape right now, because China is already influencing the Southeast Asian nations, alright, and along with it, its trading partners, so the foreign trading partners, the usual ones. So it's already having some sort of influence there. So China, what kind of influence China has on Africa? It is kind of less, because I don't know, for their own reasons, Africa has been left out. But India has been in the loop with Africa. And Africa has been a purchaser of a lot of commodities from India, from food grains. The major purchase from Africa has been medicines, alright, our generic medicines, because medicines purchased from Western nations are too costly, and our medicines are worth the while, they are cheap and they are efficient, alright, and therefore they are purchasing lots of medicines from Indian pharmaceutical companies, alright. So that is how we initially have a grip over the African nations, alright, and they want to strengthen this, because Africa, whatever it is, no such continent is as resource rich as Africa is, alright, that is a fact. But you know, it's sad that all those problems are going on, all those civil wars and everything are going on there, and basically if we tap into Africa at the right time, it will work wonders for it. So that is what India has seen in the past, alright, and they are seeing, looking into in the future. So next point, the same point actually. This adds a critical dimension to the global partnership between the two countries. However, to make this productive, India needs to change its style of implementing projects abroad, most of which have been plagued by cost and time overruns. So India currently has a bad reputation, not a very bad reputation, but bad enough that we have not been able to complete the projects overseas on time, and it has been plagued by cost and time overruns. It has been too costly to complete, and many a times it has taken a lot of time to complete. So those things we have to look into, and we have to improvise. So if we are looking to dominate the African landscape, we have to improvise on this. That's what they are saying. The next point, ensuring effective implementation and setting up mechanisms for delivery will align Mr. Modi's Act East policy with Mr. Abe's free and open Indo-Pacific strategy. This alignment sets the stage for the reordering of the Asian strategic landscape. Alright, so this is how it ends. So basically, this is more about the positives between India and Japan, and less, again, more about the negatives between India and China. Alright, and like I said, India and China are not too far apart right now, and we are getting close with Japan. We were always close with Japan. We are getting extra close visibly right now because of the Chinese influence in East China Sea and the Indian Ocean and all that. Alright, so this article is basically based on that. Okay, let's move on to the next article.